It's hard to imagine today, but for a tense few hours in October 1973, Israel faced the prospect of a resounding military defeat. While most Jewish Israelis were fasting during the holy day of Yom Kippur, a joint attack by Syria and Egypt had nearly overpowered Israel's badly unprepared troops. The war quickly became a proxy conflict between the US, which backed Israel, and the Soviet Union, which backed the Arabs. Prime Minister Golda Meir, the country's first and still only female leader, took charge over a group of bickering generals and turned the tide. But the existential shock of those initial hours remained. 6 months after the war, Meir resigned.
Today, the Egyptian and Syrian armies launched an offensive against Israel.
Half a century later, Israeli-American filmmaker Guy Nattiv has made a new film about Meir and those fateful few days during the Yom Kippur War. He joins us now from Los Angeles. Guy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
It seems to me that whenever a filmmaker makes a film about a well-known historical figure, the point is to try to change or challenge an existing narrative about that person. For you, what is the story of Golda Meir that you wanted to reframe or challenge or rewrite?
So Golda Meir was the scapegoat of the Yom Kippur War. Everybody thought that she was to blame and she's the only one who's responsible for what happened. But reports that came out 15 years ago made sure that we know that she's not the only one, that the intelligence was responsible for the debacle of the war and they screw up. So she took the blame. And she had to resign a year later. It was very easy to blame a woman, especially an older woman, for the failure and not have those commanders around her, especially Dayan, Moshe Dayan, to take the blame. She was humble enough and straight enough and honest enough to say, it's on me. But for me, I wanted to bring the new narrative into the cinema.
What aspect of that portrait do you think or hope viewers will find most surprising?
Well, I think there's a lot of stuff that no one knew about Golda. That she had cancer and she had those like secret treatments at night in the hospital. So she, in front of her commanders, she was like the grown-up in charge.
Well, I'm not going to get under the table, but don't let me stop you.
But in secret rooms, in like behind the scenes, she almost collapsed. So I think that it's a view that no one really saw Golda in, like the fragile Golda, the humorous Golda, like the Golda in front of Kissinger, how she's like manipulating him, the relationship with Kissinger in her kitchen.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, the Kissinger scene. It's one of the most extraordinary scenes in the film. When Kissinger goes to Israel to meet with Golda Meir, she has him over to her kitchen, she forces him to eat borscht, and she wrangles these concessions out of him on US support for Israel.
I think it's important that you remember that I am first an American, second I am Secretary of State, and third I am a Jew.
You forget that in Israel we read from right to left.
The dialogue in that scene is amazing. Was it based on actual recollections from Kissinger and Meir, or was it just the work of well-informed imagination in the script writing?
It's a great question. I think it's a mix. It's a mixed kind of a process. And the funny thing is that Liev Schreiber, that plays Kissinger, met with Kissinger, who's 101, in New York. He's in a New York apartment 2 days before the shooting. And he came to the screenwriter, Nicholas, and told him, listen, he told me so many cool things that we gotta put it in the script. So that's a line that Kissinger told him, actually.
What was it like to work with Helen Mirren?
It's one thing to work with one of the best actresses of our time. She's the ultimate GOAT. But she's beyond nice. She's like on time. She woke up at 3 a.m. to make the 4 until 7 makeup process for 3 hours. And it's like she's the most dedicated, nicest person that I could work with, but also one of the best actresses of our time. She's a dear friend and amazing person to work with.
As you and I are sitting here speaking, Israel itself is undergoing one of the most profound moments of domestic upheaval, really, in its history. The Netanyahu government is by far the most right-wing government in its history. There have been huge protests against Netanyahu's moves to reduce the power of the Israeli judiciary. In your view, are there lines that can be drawn between the Golda Meir period and the Israel that we see today?
I think it's the polar opposite. I think that if you look at leaders like Golda Meir, Shimon Peres, all those leaders put their trust into the judicial system. So they believe in the high court in Israel. What Benjamin Netanyahu is doing is devastating. I went to demonstrate with my dad, who's a Yom Kippur War veteran, and we met a lot of war veterans, and they all said, this is the Yom Kippur of democracy. This is something that is devastating. I can't sleep at night thinking about what would Golda say, you know? It's like a destruction of everything we built in Israel, and it's terrible, just terrible.
If there's one thing that you want viewers to take away from your film on that note, not about Golda Meir herself, but about Israel in general, what is that one thing?
I think it's the pride, the Israeli pride from the 6-Day War that got slapped, got a big giant slap. And, you know, this hubris, these commanders that walked like superheroes after the 6-Day War, we control the Middle East, and suddenly were devastated by the reality of what's going on in Israel. Before Yom Kippur, Israel thought that they are the biggest in the Middle East and no one can hurt us. But we saw what happened.
Guy Nattiv, director of the new film Golda, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the film.
Thank you. Appreciate it.